Hi there, my name is Moshe Reuven Schneider, come from South Africa. I'm 31 years old today, and this is my story. At 2 years old, my parents got divorced. My mother moved to Pretoria in South Africa. My older sister, and I moved with my mother and stayed with her. My mother remarried a non-Jewish guy, and my household was a very goyish kind of household. There was no Yiddishkeit, there was no real Shabbos or Kashrut or anything like that. And that's how we grew up. That's how we were used to it. We went to, Baruch Hashem, we went to Carmel, Pretoria, which is a Jewish school. So there was a definite influence of Yiddishkeit in my life from a young age. But when I got home, there wasn't really that Yiddishkeit at home. And for a couple of years, that's how it was. That's how life was for me. Um, Around 11, 12 years old, I went to my first B'nai Akiva camp, which is a camp away with Jewish kids. And it was an amazing experience. It was for the first time seeing Jews keeping Shabbos and understanding how many Jews there were outside of the little bubble that I lived in. And it was an inspiring time for me. Um, and coming back to Pretoria after camp, I was probably around 12 years old at the time, and I remember sitting down with my mother and telling her, "Mom, I've really been giving everything a lot of thought, and I've decided that I want to move to Johannesburg with my father, and I want to move because I want to be in a Jewish environment." And as you can imagine, any young child coming home and telling their mother, that they've lived with their whole life, now it's time for me to go to Johannesburg. It was a very stressful time. And after a couple of weeks, my mother came back to me and she said, if this is what you really want to do, and if your father's okay with taking you to come move with him so suddenly, I'm okay with it. And if that's what you believe is the best for yourself, go for it. And that was the first real step that I took towards being a Yid without being consciously aware of this at all. I arrived in Johannesburg. I was literally came from like a little farm town in Pretoria where there was no idea of like fashion or matching your shoes and your shirts or gelling your hair. And I arrived in King David Linksfield with this like bucket haircut, which is probably similar to what I have today. And there were all these Jewish kids, like hundreds of them, and they were just from a completely different world that I was used to at all. And I started to mingle in, and I had a great education there. It was a very good school, a bit absent from Judaism, as in the real essence of what Yiddishkeit is about. Beautiful school, more traditional sort of aspect. And I was there for matric. I played rugby, and I intermingled and integrated very well into the school as a prefect over there at King David Linksfield. And it was a great experience. In my years being at King David Linksfield, around the ages of about 16, 15, 16, 17, my father lived in Savoy at the time. And there was a shul that was just around the corner, Chabad Savoy. And I used to, on a Shabbos, I just sort of wandered into the shul one day, and it was so warm and welcoming and accepting, and I really felt a sense of home. And it took a couple of months, and I'd understood what Shabbos was, and I understood this connection to Yiddishkeit and Chassidus, and I started to get involved with Chabad. I started to keep Shabbos. I um, started to keep kosher. I started to really like get a sense of what Judaism was, deeper than just the superficial Friday night candles and Kiddush, but really it's like sort of trying to get an idea of what Judaism is really about. It was an incredible time. I had two friends of mine, two beautiful Jews, absolute diamonds. The one is Simcha, the other one is Baruch. These were also guys that were at King David Linksfield with me. Um, you know, just being a normal traditional Jew, and I was keeping Shabbos at this point, and I started to invite them to come to me for Shabbos. So Simcha would come to me for Shabbos. His name at the time was Brad, and Baruch, who was actually, he went by his English name Brett. They would come to me for Shabbos and they'd start keeping Shabbos with me and for bringing, and slowly we started to understand more about Judaism and Yiddishkeit. The only thing is, at that point, I wasn't really learning Torah, so I didn't have an anchor. I had all this excitement about the religion, I had excitement about Shabbos, but there wasn't really a deep anchor keeping me strong within the Yiddishkeit. And as it goes, I reached my later teens, 17, 18, and I found that a lot of my friends that I was hanging out with at school weren't so into the whole Jewish thing. They weren't really keeping Shabbos or kosher or anything like that. They were more into meeting girls, getting high, smoking weed, sort of just the fun sort of fun stuff. And it took after me keeping Shabbos for about three years, I started to feel like I was the odd one out, and all my friends were going out and having girlfriends and all this kind of stuff. And I sort of came to a decision that maybe this whole Jewish idea and the Shabbos thing wasn't so. I wasn't really fit for it, and really what happened is what seemed to be more exciting on the outside attracted me, and I sort of threw in the towel and went and joined everyone on the outside. Excuse me, going to parties and really spending my weekends at clubs and raves and just schmoozing and meeting people and all these desires, just following whatever my heart and my eyes saw. Ironically, the two friends that I had introduced to come to me for Shabbos, they had finished school, they finished matric. I went to travel the world, I went to America, I went to London, I went to Thailand, and they ended up going to yeshiva. They went to a yeshiva called Mayanot, which is an incredible institution for Baal Teshuvas. And they continued with the Yiddishkeit. Simcha today is a beautiful Hasidic Yid with a wonderful Eishes Chal of a wife, and he's got a beautiful daughter and son. And Baruch, he carried on after he went to Mayanot. He carried on to do smicha. He became a rabbi. He doesn't practice as a rabbi, but he's incredibly knowledgeable. Wonderful, wonderful man. He's married with twins and a little boy, and Baruch Hashem, they have a great life, and they're doing a lot of mitzvahs. Me, on the other hand, I decided that the whole Shabbos idea wasn't really for me, and I went to have fun. I spent the next 10 years, from 18 to 22, literally just having a good time. I went to the Burning Man Festival in Nevada. I went to Ibiza. I went to Amsterdam. I went to the coffee shops. I was just following whatever I wanted. That's what I wanted to do. What happened was, there was this idea that came up. My father and I went to a Chabad house on Purim, and we had a couple of chaims, and we're having a good time. My father was turning 60, and there's nothing really that he doesn't have or that he didn't need. And I've been thinking, what could be a great 60th birthday present for my father? And there I hear these Hasidim that were busy sitting around talking about this trip that they were doing to Kilimanjaro, which is the highest mountain in Africa. It's in Tanzania, for those of you who don't know. It's 5,985 meters off the sky. It is doable, but it is one hell of a trek. It's hard work. It's not a simple story. One has to prepare. One has to know mentally, physically, emotionally that you're going through a real gauntlet when you start that tour. And what happened was, I decided, and I said to my father, Dad, is that something that you would like to do for your 60th birthday? He said, 100% I'm in. And the maddest thing happened. I got this mishugas. I got this crazy idea. It's completely secular. I wasn't keeping Shabbos. I wasn't keeping kosher. Nothing like that. And I get this idea that now there's 6 Jews doing this trip up Kilimanjaro. If I can get another 4 of them to join, we can take a Sefer Torah and we can do the highest ever Torah reading that's ever been recorded. And I got a bee in my bonnet. I started asking people and asking anyone, if, just come on this trip and trying to get this million together up the mountain. And my good friend Simcha, I said to him, listen, Simcha, I really want you to come with me up this Kilimanjaro trip. It's a fun trip. It's going to be kosher. We're taking a Sefer Torah. We need you for the million. If you don't come, we're not going to have a million. I tried guilt tripping him. I tried everything I could do. He wouldn't budge. He said it's him and his wife's 3rd wedding anniversary. It's Gimel Tammuz, which is the Yortzeit of the Lubavitcher Rebbe. And I couldn't get him to come. So it was Pesach a couple years back. It was about 3.5 years ago. I'm not sure exactly. And Baruch, my other friend who became a rabbi, invited myself and Simcha and his families to him for a Su'udah on Pesach. And because of Pesach, we couldn't drink whiskey, so we drank wine, and we had a couple bottles of wine. And the next thing, we were doing Hasidic somersaults called a kula on the table, on his wife's table, and it was like a very exciting, explosive experience. And Simcha turned around to me, and he said to me, Moshe, I've been thinking about Kilimanjaro. How many days is this trip? So I said, listen, it's probably about 10 days from the day we leave till the day we're back. And he said, I'll tell you what, let's make a deal. I will go with you up this mountain on condition that when we get back, you go to Yeshiva. You go to Mayanot for the exact same amount of time that we climb this mountain for 10 days. So my best mate and I make this deal. 10 days up the mountain for 10 days at Yeshiva. And took me a bit of time to think about it. He gave me 24 hours to come back to him with an answer. He had his wife's permission to miss their 3rd wedding anniversary just so that I would go to Yeshiva. And 24 hours, it was about probably 10 or 12 hours into the 24, I phoned him and I said, Simcha, you've got a deal. We're going up this mountain. We managed, Baruch Hashem, to get 12 Yidden, and we took a Sefer Torah. I'm sure you can find it on the internet. We climbed this mountain, and it was hardcore, altitude sickness and crying and emotions. It was beautiful seeing Hashem's signature throughout the whole, this incredible through his nature. And we got to the top of the mountain. My father was completely exhilarated and excited. It was the best thing he could have done for his birthday. He complained a lot, but when we were at the top, he appreciated it. And we came down. We came down from this mountain. It was really tough. And about a week later, I went to just check that my business was okay. Everything was fine. And a week later, I flew to Israel and I went to Yeshiva. And the Yeshiva I went to was Mayanot. It's a Baal Yeshiva. It accepts people from wherever they are, wherever they're holding. And my impression of Yeshiva was, everyone with black hats and white shirts, and that you had to do certain things all day. And Mayanot was just really a place that accepted me as I was, tattoos and all. And I spent my first 3 days in Mayanot really sort of trying to work out where I was and just sort of get my feet on the ground. And it was quite daunting. It was a little bit scary. And I remember phoning my Chabad Shliach, Rabbi Moshe Reuven, and on the 3rd day that I was in Mayanot, and phoning him and saying, listen, Rabbi, I don't think this whole yeshiva thing's for me. It's a lot of learning. I haven't sat down for 10 years and learned anything. It's been tough. And he said to me, Moshe, if you want to, you're a big boy. If you want to go to Tel Aviv and spend the rest of your 7 days in Israel and Tel Aviv, go for it. And as he said that, I remembered the deal I made with my best friend Simcha. And I decided I'm going to be open. I'm going to circumcise my heart and open it to the place that I'm at. And not be closed off and just sort of see maybe there's something here. And I remember the next morning, it was my 4th day, I went to a Hasidus lecture by a rabbi called Rabbi Solberg, who still teaches at Mayanot today, and he was teaching a Hasidic Maimah, which is a discourse that was given by, I think it was the Friedeker Rebbe, called Basi Lagani. And he was busy teaching this Maimah, and inside he started telling me, and I was in a class with other people, and he started saying that a Jew, what's so special about a Jew is a Jew doesn't just have a soul. A Jew has two souls. Okay, a Jew has what's called a nefesh elokis, which is a godly soul, which is literally a part of God that he entrusts in every single Jew or convert. And a Jew also has an animal soul. So a Jew has two souls. And I was sitting there looking at him, and I said to him, like, sorry, Rabbi, I want to understand something. I went to a private Jewish school. I have a good Jewish education. I've never learned Torah on these levels, but what do you mean I have two souls? Like, I was always told I have a soul. Maybe a good inclination, a bad inclination, but I was told I had a soul. And all of a sudden, I started to realize that there was so much more depth to Judaism that I was ever taught. Or that most average people, average Jews, not that any Jews ever average, but the average knowledge of a Jew is really on a superficial sort of level, like a traditional understanding. But there's so much depth. And that really opened me up to realizing how little I know. And he was explaining to me that the animal soul, the nefesh bahamis, that's the part of us that chases the desires and wants to have instant gratification, etc. And it's the godly soul that really gets, in a sense, turned on by things that are holy, by eating kosher, by keeping Shabbos, by learning Torah. These things, that's how you cultivate the godly soul. And I left the class, I was completely boggled. I felt like a train had hit me, a train of information, a train of truth. And I spent the day sort of like wondering to myself, hold on, like, is the world that I come from, when my parents don't keep Shabbos, the people around me don't keep Shabbos, Saturday is a time to make money or a time to enjoy myself at a shopping center or whatever the case is that world truth? And this yeshiva that I'm in is like just a little bit wonkers, and they like just have this thing that they say. Or maybe that world that I come from maybe is a bit off the target, and this yeshiva is telling the truth. And I had this, like, I was at like a crossroad, and I was standing there trying to work out, like, where do I go? If the yeshiva is true, wow, then I've got a lot of my life that I need to change around, and I better start that soon. But if what the yeshiva is saying isn't true, okay, I had a good experience, I learned a little bit of stuff I didn't know, and I'll carry on with my life as it was. Thinking I was happy, now I realize I wasn't happy at all in the previous life that I lived, the way that I was. And that night I went into my room at the yeshiva. I had a room to myself, and I said the Shema. I said Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, and the first paragraph of the Shema, which I probably hadn't said in 10 years or 15 years, I don't even know how long it was. And I said openly, I said, Hashem, I really need your assistance right now. I mean, obviously, if you are the living God, then you must know what I'm going through and what I'm understanding and comprehending at this point. And I said to him, I need direction. I need to know, is this yeshiva, is what I'm hearing about the Torah and Yiddishkeit, is this truth? Is this right? Because if it is, I'll live my life like that. Or is the life I'm from? Yeah, what should I do? And I went to sleep not expecting an answer. I was just, saying what I was feeling and speaking to God, which is something I suggest for anyone. And 3 o'clock in the morning, I woke up to a dream that I've never had again, and I will never forget the dream. And I immediately took out my journal and my pen and started writing everything that I had experienced in my dream, as much as I could transfer it from my thoughts to my hand to the paper. And basically, in my dream, I was sitting down, and the Lubavitcher Rebbe was sitting across from me, looking at me. And he had a very serious look on his face, almost frightening. And he looked at me, he like pierced into my eyes, and he said, Moshe, it's time for you to do Teshuva. It's time for you to wake up. The life that you're living isn't the right way. It's not the truth. And we need you. We need you to get on with things. We need you to do Teshuva. You have a purpose, like every Jew has. You have a purpose to do. And it's time for you to wake up. And I woke up that morning. That was my 4th day in yeshiva. And I phoned the same Chabad rabbi that I'd spoken to literally 24 hours before on the 3rd day, telling him I'm not sure if I want to be here. And I phoned him and he said, Moshe, yes. And I said, Rabbi Dovi, I know this is going to sound a little bit wonkers, but I'm going to, I know what I told you yesterday, and I want you to just forget everything I said yesterday. In the last 24 hours, I've had a lot of realizations, and I'm going to be home in 6 days, and I need you to make sure that you can kasher my kitchen by the time I'm home, because there's no ways I'll put treif inside my body. And that's been a small snippet of my experience and my learning. And the more that I've looked inside the Torah, and the more that I've learned, the more that I'm seeing that there's so much more. There's vastness of knowledge and answers to any question in Judaism for a Jew. And I'm currently in yeshiva at the moment. I'm 31 years old. I pulled completely out of business. I have a small business that supports me, but I pulled out of the big scale business that I was running. And I'm now in yeshiva. I've committed to be in yeshiva for the year. I've been here already for 3 months. It's my third time back at yeshiva. I plan to, it will take me a long time because I have a lot of catch up to do from not learning as a child. But I plan to do smicha. I plan to become a rabbi. It's part of my target, my goals for life. Maybe not a practicing rabbi, but I plan to do the full process. And I guess my message to anyone who's watching this video is that Judaism is so full and so rich, and it has everything that you need to look for and everything inside of it. And I searched lots. I searched in India, I searched in Thailand, I searched through partying, I searched through any instant gratification that I could find. And I realize now that it's like when you're looking for your glasses and you realize that actually they're right on your face. And my message to you is that if you're Jewish, look into Judaism. Look a little bit deeper. If you have questions, ask those questions to someone. You will definitely find answers. And from the deepest part of my heart, I wish you good luck. And you should have a tzlocha rabba and a beautiful and successful life.